Joining me to talk about carbon shoes is Dr. Kathleen Walker. Kathleen has been a physiotherapist for more than 20 years, working in the NHS and private practice, and she's worked at major athletics championships. She's been a team physiotherapist for Wales women's cricket side, and she's earned her PhD researching interventions to help runners prevent and manage running injuries. And I wanted Kat to join me to talk about carbon shoes because she's been sharing some interesting things on Instagram that have not been widely reported on in lots of places. So my experience of carbon shoes is as a runner. I've coached runners for 10 years, and obviously in the last couple of years, carbon shoes have come into that equation. And I test shoes for women's running and for the run testers. So mine's very much like a amateur trying on these shoes and talking about them experience, and Kat has been looking at the research out there about what's going on when we use carbon shoes, the good and the bad potentially. So the carbon shoes are there to hopefully make us do two things, run faster, and they potentially are giving us better recovery times. That's what the marketing would say.
Yes. I'm not so sure about the recovery times, but I know for sure, looking at the studies that I've been looking at the last couple of days, is that the aim of the shoe, the way the shoe works, is it drastically improves our running economy. So I think for any recreational runner or elite runner, the aim is to be as economical as you possibly can when you're running. You don't want to be expending any excess energy when you're running submaximally. So when we talk about submaximal running, I would say that is like your marathon pace running, so not like Usain Bolt maximal 10-second sprint. So the idea behind the shoes is that they improve our running economy. We expend less energy, so we've got more energy to run quicker or run longer.
So how do they do that? When we say carbon shoes, we're talking about a carbon plate in the sole of the shoe.
Yes. I'd read something somewhere about how the shoes increase your stride length. And that really interested me, because I was like, but how? And why does a runner want to increase their stride length? And it's to do with the stack height of the shoe. So these shoes have a bigger stack height, which gives the illusion of having a longer leg, and a longer leg actually makes us a more economical runner. So by giving you sort of putting an insert into your shoe to give you a longer leg, that then increases your stride length. So that's one way. And then they think the mechanical energy stored within the shoe kind of it returns that mechanical energy back to you. And I've got here, the Vaporfly shoe returns 87% of your mechanical energy. So it's storing energy and giving it back to you, almost like another tendon. So when we talk about energy storage within muscles and joints and things, the Achilles tendon is probably the most effective in the body at storing mechanical energy to help propel us forward. So I was thinking about that today, and like, is it almost working like another tendon, like a artificial tendon, so storing energy and then giving that energy back to you. And then the other way that it works is this teeter-totter effect, which I've had to look at.
Sounds like sweets, doesn't it? It sounds like something you eat, like some sweets we had in the 80s.
Yeah. Or I was like Weeble Wobble, like I don't know, like those toys that go back and forth and you can't ever knock them over. They just spring back. But I think what in sort of British terms, that would be a seesaw effect. And they think, so this was proposed by some researchers, that When you hit the ground mid-stance, there's a mechanical force, a reaction force that pushes up through via the heel. So the force is directed through the heel, up and forward, and that sort of propels you forward. And that, again, improves your running economy. So all those things are aimed to make you a more economical runner.
So it all sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where does it, so we know that obviously these shoes first hit with the elites, and we've seen Eliud Kipchoge running in them and running very fast in them. He's already a fast guy, but the marginal gains of these supposedly are what helped to break that 2 hour for the non-race marathon that he did. So it works there, and the fact that all of the elites are wearing them shows us that actually they do think that it's working for them. Does it work in amateurs with like a mid-pack marathon runner?
I think there's been some debate about this, and I was having a read today. Some studies say no, it's only the high level faster runners that benefit, but I was reading a study today that said that for running economy, recreational runners can gain as much as 9% improvement in their running economy, compared to like it could drop down to like a 1.1% hindrance, but overall there was a almost 10% improvement in running economy for a group of European runners. They also had a look in that study at some Kenyan runners, 7 Kenyan elite runners, and their variation was huge. They had as much as 11% improvement and 11% hindrance. So I think there was a lot of, it definitely benefits both groups. I think, you know, a percentage improvement is a percentage improvement, no matter, you know, even if it's 2%. But if we know that these decent recreational runners are getting a 9 to 10% improvement, then it shows that it does benefit recreational runners for sure.
Yeah, and it sounds great. But we're talking running economy rather than like if someone said you could have 10% improvement on your race time, that's a different matter, and I would probably hand over more than £200 for that. Yeah. But can you say, for people that are unsure, what is running economy if we're talking about an improvement in that?
So running economy is the amount of, the amount of metabolic energy you're expending while you're running. And how quickly you get tired, effectively your VO2 max. So I think people know about VO2 max. So it's basically how efficient we are as runners, and how quickly we get tired, and how quickly we're using our energy to complete a task or complete a race. So I would think improved running economy would always translate to a quicker time, because if you're expending less energy while you're running, you're going to have more energy to complete the race. Does that make sense? You've got more in reserve, as it were. So if your running economy is better, you're not having to use extra energy to try and keep yourself to be efficient. So then that will translate to being quicker over time, I would think.
Or the relative effort would decrease.
Yes, so that's their way of putting it.
Or you might go,
my word waffle.
You might, the effort to maintain the same pace might be less.
Yeah. And I would think that would surely then lead to better gains later on in the race when things are getting harder. Or you might want to start ramping things up and get a bit quicker. You've got that energy in reserve then to do a bit more towards the end of the race, which, let's face it, no one wants a fast finish. That, you know, negative splits are the ideal, aren't they? So, you know, are they going to contribute to that? I'm not sure, but I would say better running economy is is going to translate to quicker time for sure.
So all sounds great so far, but the vast majority, or I don't think I've found a stability carbon race shoe. They're neutral shoes, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, looking at them, I don't know where you could get the stability from, because they look quite, I don't know, what was your experience of them? They look quite unsteady.
So my first experience was wearing the North Face Vectin, the first edition of that. So that was quite a while back. And it was strange going into something with that technology in the first time. But it was a trail shoe, and you don't really notice these things so much on the trail. Having said that, one of my favorite shoes that I run in at the moment is the Hoka Tecton X, and that's got a carbon plate in, and I love this shoe. And I don't probably wear it to its full potential. I wear it just when I'm going out on the trails around here. I wore it for one cross country race, which I did check the rules and they weren't banned. And I really like it. And it feels like a really easy shoe to run in. I ran London last year in the Saucony Endorphin Pro, the pink ones, and I didn't have a great, like, I did some training runs in them. They felt so light and bouncy and great, and they did feel like they were helping me run faster. And I'd say maybe on like the 10k runs that I was doing around here, in a kind of not easy but not tempo effort, they would probably make me 20 to 30 seconds per mile faster. Now, how much is that is definitely energy efficiency from the shoe. How much is the mental thing of I've got these shoes on and I'm in that mindset of going a bit quicker? It's difficult to say, isn't it? But they definitely feel to me that they were making me run faster. They were a little bit small for me, and I took that gamble and wore them to run London, and actually came to regret it halfway round because my feet were really hurting. I'd gone up to 8 miles in them in training, and thought, well, it balanced it up, and probably should have just gone for a comfortable cushioned shoe on race day, but went for them, in the name of research and all that. But so I do feel like they were making me a bit faster, but obviously the fact that then mine became a bit painful kind of outweighed that, because it's difficult to run once you get to that point. I ran in Puma Deviate Nitro Elite.
They all got such long names.
two or three. So yeah, the snappy title, Nitro Elite, there it is.
It's like
all that
now.
all that to parkrun at the weekend. I did go faster than I have in quite a while. I'd like to take some of the credit for that, but I guess some of the credit is for the shoe as well. But that's like, so this is, there's another elite, this one's called Elite, but then there's like a Pro Elite version in the Puma range, which looks a bit more like the Vaporfly, Alphafly type over the, outrageously shaped shoe styling. So I can't remember the original point that you asked me there. How do they feel?
It's like the ultimate cushioned shoe. That's what they look like to me. They're like cushioned, but next level cushioning.
Yeah, I'd say that the Saucony Endorphin Pro felt, the moment I stuck it on and tested it, just like in those first mile, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's a dream. For me, it didn't go like that over the duration of a marathon. But again, some of that is because of it not fitting me right. And I I would, in normal, if I didn't have to do my job of testing shoes and stuff, and wasn't swayed by the way things look, I probably should stick to a more of a stability shoe. That was what I was told, you know, years ago when I first went into a running shop. They gave me a pair of Brooks Adrenaline, and I never had any issues with them, and I still love Brooks Adrenaline. But I like trying other stuff, and I can run in a neutral shoe now. I guess maybe I've changed a bit over the years, but I do still feel most comfortable in a support shoe. So yeah, that's why it's tricky on the.
Yeah, I wonder if we haven't seen a stability version, because that would sacrifice the other effects, maybe.
Yeah, I was listening to a very interesting chat. I will link to it on, I think it was on Run Through's Instagram channel the other day. One of the coaches that they partner with was talking with one of his athletes, and she had got a custom orthotic fitted to put into a carbon shoe because she needed that stability but wasn't available in any of the shoes, so she got a carbon custom orthotic fitted to her to that shoe. So it's adding that even more price on top of the already pricey shoes to do that.
I mean, I think that's why I haven't gone down that road at the moment. I try and get I really like Saucony, and I tend to go on the websites and see if I can track down the best possible price I can in the type of shoe that I want. I haven't been tempted yet to spend £200 to £300 on a shoe yet, because because my goals, maybe it's a goal thing. My goals at the moment aren't to run particularly fast. My running's changed. So if maybe times are what you're motivated by, then yeah, these shoes are definitely going to help you achieve that, alongside all the other things that we should do as runners: progressive training plan, recovery, hydration. You know, that they are good, there's no doubt, but we can't ignore the other training variables that are important when we're running.
I think for me, when I was doing London last year, I wasn't aiming for a goal time per se, in terms of if I was looking to get a Boston qualifier or something, and I needed to hit a certain time, and something that would help me get that, I would probably go into. For me, I was a bit like, I want this race to be over
as soon as possible.
This might help. So let's talk about, because your specialism is injury in runners. Is there anything to show that this increases your risk or decreases your risk in wearing a carbon shoe?
I still don't think we know yet. I mean, the shoes were made available to the general public in 2017. That's when they became mainstream. I think it was 2017. So I don't think there's been big enough studies yet. We haven't collected. I'm sure there are people out there right now collecting data. There was a study that created a bit of a buzz on social media, and they were sort of suggesting that the shoe might cause a particular type of stress fracture, but that it was a case study type research article. So this person happened to know of 6 or 7 people who had developed a navicular stress fracture. So the navicular is a bone kind of in the center of the foot, and they'd all developed the stress fracture. They were all decent level runners as well. And I wouldn't have said, reading the article, I wouldn't have said any of them were recreational athletes either. They were all high level adolescent track athletes, really good triathletes. So the article was hinting that the common theme was that they'd all been training in super shoes, but when you actually read between the lines and went into the patient history, it was training error, really. So they'd got these shoes, hadn't really been trialing them or training in them, and jumped into them to either do a race, or had done one long run and then did a race in them, or they did a really heavy training session, speed session in them, having never used them before. Stress fractures don't tend to occur either that quickly. You know, stress fractures develop over a period of weeks, and the people in these case studies, they'd only been using them a few times. So I'd query whether this clinic was just really unlucky that they had that many navicular stress fractures come through. It's one of the not so pleasant ones. They are harder to resolve. So I would say it wasn't the shoe itself, it was a combination of things, which, to be honest, is the case with most running injuries. And it did make me think of a similar situation that we had many, many, many years back with the barefoot craze.
Yeah.
Where people heard that these shoes were the ultimate running shoe. It's better to run barefoot or in minimalist shoes. And people were going out and buying those Vibram type shoes and then developing foot injuries, stress fractures, Achilles tendinopathies, and linking it back to the shoes. But again, when you looked into the history of these injuries, they hadn't really transitioned. And that was a shoe that changed the way that you run, pushed you up onto your forefoot to run. And you probably had a lot of people who were heel strikers or were used to really cushioned shoes or stability shoes, changing into a completely different shoe that changed their running gait, and then they were continuing to train the way they normally do in a completely different type of shoe. And again, I would call that training error rather than the shoe itself was a problem. So I don't know whether it's the same with this type of shoe, because of this change in the way the forces act on the foot when you put your foot to like this teeter-totter effect. Is it a case of, because it is slightly changing the way that you run with the longer stride as well? Is it the same with the barefoot stuff? Do people need a transition period to run in them? And if not, you're going to maybe set yourself up to getting injured.
See, that is the paradox, isn't it? In that the shoe is there to give you the edge on race day. And so in theory, I see it as a bit like altitude training. So athletes go up to altitude, do all their training up there to make it harder on their body, and then they come down to sea level, then they race where it's easier to give them that advantage. Now, if we see the advantage that carbon shoes give you, you want to have that on race day, but if you had it in all of your training, then it's making your training easier potentially.
Yeah.
So obviously you want to keep it as a tool for race day to give you that advantage on race day, but then you need to do a certain amount of training in it to ensure that it's a good fit for you. And, we all know that basic rule of no new things on race day, but now the race shoes come along and say, oh, but use us only for race day for the advantage. So there's that difficult,
and that
how much is enough, but not too much.
Because you know, Twitter can be quite savage. There's some running accounts that go, oh, I saw this person doing a 30-minute park run in their Vaporflies. Ha ha ha. And I'm like, just like you were saying that, but you still need to run in them. Like, yeah. I know that the thought is that they should be for faster runners, but 30-minute park runners want to get faster as well. And if they're not having the opportunity to run in them, they're not going to get used to them, and therefore they're not going to get faster. They're an adjunct, they're not the whole picture. So I think you're right. You need to get that balance of learning to run in them, but maybe doing some other runs in your normal trainers as well, so that sometimes you know that you're doing most of the work. I don't know.
So then you do get the companion shoes, isn't it? So the Endorphin Pro has the Saucony Endorphin Pro would have the Saucony Speed, which is the companion shoe, which is a bit like it but not quite like it, that you're supposed to use to train. So Nike would have like the Air Zoom, and I guess the shoe I've been running in, maybe that's the companion. It's kind of a bit in between being, is it the companion for the other Puma, or is it a separate one? And the Brooks Hyperion Elite have got the Hyperion
That's
Max.
a clever way to get you to spend more money.
It is, isn't it?
You have this shoe, but what you really need is the shoe that goes with it.
So then we're not talking £200, we're talking like £360.
Yeah.
So yeah, then you've worn your super shoes for race day. Of course you're going to then wear them to the park run, because you've done your race. You're going to get that wear out of them somewhere.
Yeah, you have to wear them. It's like cost per wear with like a really expensive pair of, I don't know, high heels or something. Some really posh design. You're going to wear them. Get the most out of them.
So if I am an average runner and I'm training for a marathon, before I go into these, buying a pair of these, should I maybe look at other things first, like my running form, or efficiencies that I can make without a shoe?
I think so. I mean, if we're talking about running economy, there's other ways you can improve that. You can do your strength work, which will make you a more economical runner. You could get someone to look at your gait and, you know, maybe look at your cadence and whether you're overstriding. Do you need some help in reducing your stride length again to make you more economical? You know, and sensible things like, are you getting enough sleep, and do you have a training plan that's appropriate for your ability and your goals? I think they're all things that we still need to look at. I mean, when I was reading, people make a big deal about the shoes being a big part of the Kipchoge sub 2 hour marathon, but they pointed out, you know, the course had been selected to provide the best possible running surface he could run on. There were pacers who were positioned in a particular way so that there was a drafting effect. He had the light being beamed onto the road to tell him where he needed to be all the time. He's the world's best runner. He's, you know, his anthropology, his biomechanics, he is like a once in a lifetime person. He's literally built for what he's doing. So yes, the shoes are good, but then you've got running's multifactorial. You know, would he have had the same result if it had been blowing a gale and, you know, torrential rain that day? Probably not. You know, the shoes aren't going to change the weather. So yeah, I mean, we can think the shoes definitely. The current evidence, although the samples are small, are showing that there is an effect. But there's loads of other ways you can maximise your running economy as well.
So one of the things that I see, you know, talking about parkrun, is I see an increasing amount of carbon shoes at parkrun. Don't see an increasing amount of people warming up.
No, Joe, I was thinking about this again today, and it's people. I think it's the same in all sports, in all hobbies, in illness and injury as well. People want the pill or the bit of tech, that something tangible that they can put their hands on to say this will make XY situation better or improve. I think you don't see people wanting to do the warm-ups per se, the warm downs, the mobility work, some yoga, going for a massage. You know, there's I think that the shoes have been marketed so well that maybe they're making people think they don't need to do many other things alongside them. So that, like, this, it's almost like this shoe has become the answer to all the running goals, and like people aren't thinking about all the other necessary things that go into running. But I think that's a very sport minded thing as well. You know, if, you know, cyclists, I'm sure as well, if they knew that bike was the best bike ever and it was going to make them faster over their local Strava route or make them king of the mountain or queen of the mountain, they'd probably go and buy that bike without thinking about, you know, maybe I need to train on that hilly route or do a few more, you know, drafted ride. You know, there's just, I think, I don't know, it's interesting. I know they do provide a benefit, but like you say, people might start missing out all the other things they need to do that benefit their running.
Yeah, I think my park run is just under 2 miles jog from me, and if we take my park run last Saturday as an example, if I jogged there, warmed up, and was wearing these shoes, so I had 2 big ticks there. If I was wearing the shoes but had just got out of a car and not bothered to do anything, versus jogging there in an everyday trainer, which one of me, the same person, the same condition on that given day, I think I would put my money on me warmed up in a normal pair of trainers over me just getting out of a car in those shoes, because my legs were we need some twins. My legs were like, you know, when I start off running out of the door, I sometimes think, oh God, I can't be bothered to go fast at park run today, and oh, I don't know that I feel up for it. But by the time I get there, my legs have loosened up, I've warmed up, everything's going a bit better. My frame of mind has changed as well. And I had that confidence to put myself further forward in the starting lineup. So I do think that was more advantageous to me on the day than the shoes that I was wearing.
Yeah, I think, like you say, you can't ignore all the other factors that go into running as well. Your mental state on the day as well. You know, whether you're carrying a niggle going into it, or have you, you know, had enough rest that week. You know, you can't ignore it. I keep coming, I'm like a broken record, but I keep saying it's multifactorial. Running injury, there's just too many. And I think that's a problem with all the research that's coming out, is you're never going to get, like you say, we need twins. You're never going to get a group of runners that are, I mean, they can, you know, sometimes we need people kind of this height and this BMI and this amount of running experience, but you're never going to get a homogenous group of 1,500 people to test the shoes on. That's never going to happen, because, you know, we're all just too different.
And then obviously we're not going to get, it'd be nice to see, wouldn't it, like research on women and men as to how these shoes work for different genders.
Yeah, because I'm sure I read as well that the effect on the sort of the world best times from 5K up to marathon, the effect has been bigger in women. And yet, when there was a systematic review and of like 30 studies which have looked at the shoes, and only one of those studies included women in their group. So we're sort of none the wiser again.
I need to write up my own anecdotal thing, call it a study, and then we go, we've doubled the amount of studies with women.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, again, you know, the sort of the runners seem to be 25-year-old males in all the studies. So, and recreational groups of runners tend to be, well, in my research, my survey, over 60% of the respondents were women, and they sort of averaged the age of 40 to 44. So, the studies which are looking at 25-year-old elite male runners aren't particularly helpful to a 55-year-old woman who's doing a park run every Saturday. That's not going to help inform what she's doing with the shoes at all. No, we need more research on women, as always.
So if I was someone that I'm thinking, oh, I might give these shoes a go, how do we want to tell them to approach that? First off, I would say go to somewhere that you can try them on, and try on a few different pairs for a start.
Yes, I agree. I don't think this is something that you can just buy off the internet and try. I mean, I've never tried them. I think I would have to go and have a go, just because I've seen the way people walk in. They look, I don't know, are they unstable to start with?
No, they feel a bit odd, but I wouldn't say I felt unstable in any of the pairs that I've worn. The Saucony, you do feel like you're more on top of them than these Hokas. You feel like you're more in them. But I've not tried the Nike ones. I do see some people run when you're running behind someone and they seem to be running completely off their heels, kind of off to the side of it. They probably need to have tried those on a treadmill in a sports shop beforehand, before making that purchasing decision. But that's not the shoe, that's the person and the shoe, and it's not a good marriage there.
The comfort index isn't there. I would say if you're going to try them on and try a few pairs on with the salesperson, they may film you, they may look at your gait, but what I would say is go off what we call the comfort index and just think what feels subjectively most comfortable to you on the treadmill there. And then I would even suggest, before going out on the roads, I would maybe try them on a treadmill for a couple of runs first, just so because you're not going to get the length of time that you need in a shop to be able to really try them. So maybe you need to try a couple of runs on a treadmill, 5k, 7k, just to make sure that they are comfortable to you. They're not rubbing, you don't feel like you're being pushed out of your, onto the outside of your heel. And the benefit of that means you can return them to the shop because they haven't been worn outside.
Well, I think maybe it's in response to this, but there are some brands. I know Hoka offer 30-day. If you're not happy, you can return shoes. And Brooks, I think it may have up to 90 days that if you are not happy with the performance of something. So they're potential, and including worn stuff. If you're not happy with that, then look at those offers in terms of what their returns policies are on those. But they do seem to be kind of pushing that out there to get people out trying their shoes. But what I would also say is, even in a sports shop, you're going to have a different experience on the treadmill because of the cushioning in that belt. If there's like space within the shop that you could just like even do a little run around on the floor or jump up and down and get a sense of it on a harder surface as well.
I wonder why Brooks has said 90 days. That's 3 months to decide that you don't like them.
You could they might have people doing that. I think they've got to be in a reasonable condition, in that probably it's shown that you have taken them outside to try them, but not so much that you've actually run your race. There's gels and Lucozade spilt all over it, and then you're like, actually, these don't work for me. I'm sorry. I didn't get a PB. Can I have my money back, please?
Yeah, like in a restaurant when you've eaten the dinner and gone, I don't like that. Can I have a refund, please?
Yeah. So lovely. All right. Well, I've got my shoes. I've been to the shop. I've tried them on. And I think they're the one for me. And how am I going to transition do you think, between that purchase and race day in terms of building up some sort of time in them?
I think it's like that, building up time on feet, and maybe not going out for your 20-mile run off the bat, but maybe doing a 5K in them, leaving it a couple of runs and then going out in them again. It's almost like injury rehab, really, and almost stealing from the transition periods that the barefoot shoe suggested. You know, you don't just go out and do all your runs in them straight away. Maybe try a 5K, leave it a day or a couple of runs, go out again, and gradually build. I would say it's what we call graded exposure. Is just you gradually expose your lower legs and your tendons and your muscles in your feet and your calf muscles to this new way of running. And again, just gradually building that time up, building that momentum up in them. Maybe start slow first before you then go and do some speed work in them. I would say rule of thumb is always better to build up time and feet first before you start building up the speed in something. So yeah, just a gradual transition, I would say, over a couple of weeks.
Lovely. Well, thanks very much, Kat. And we can link to some articles if there's anything that comes up, we will link in. But thanks very much. That was really useful.
Good, thank you.